Assemblymember Jim Brennan, Chair of the Standing Committee on the Cities of the New York State Assembly. First, I would like to thank the Department of Environmental Conservation for the opportunity to present Assemblymember Brennan's testimony on this important matter. The issue of natural gas drilling is of critical importance to the people of the city and state of New York. Approximately 90% of the New York City water supply comes from the Catskill and Delaware watersheds. New York City's water is of extremely high quality, and approximately 9 million people, about half of the state's residents, depend on this system as a sole source of clean water. The potential contamination of this water supply can have catastrophic consequences that both the city and state of New York cannot afford. The preliminary regulations set forth by the DEC do not adequately address the risks of natural gas drilling and the potential adverse impact on the New York City watershed. The draft leaves unanswered the question of the cumulative environmental impact of numerous wells and widespread horizontal drilling. No amount of regulation can ensure that no accidents or spills will occur. Should natural gas drilling result in toxic pollution of this invaluable resource, the costs of filtration are estimated in the billions. In addition to the concerns that relate specifically to the New York City watershed, hydro-fracking poses numerous other serious environmental risks that cannot be overlooked. The most significant of these risks involve the impossibility of treating the contaminated water that results from drilling. The risks to the purity of the New York City water supply are too great to allow horizontal drilling and hydro-fracking in the Marcellus Shale formation. I hope the DEC will alter course and take the necessary steps to prohibit drilling in the watershed. However, it appears that legislation may be necessary to protect this critical resource and the health and safety of New York State citizens. My office, along with 21 other members, has introduced into the Assembly a bill that bans gas drilling in the New York City watershed, the Delaware River Basin, and other significant water supply sources. The bill sets forth a comprehensive scheme for strict regulation in the remaining areas of shale. That scheme includes disclosure of all chemicals, prohibition of permits for companies with bad environmental records, and mandatory remediation and cleanup of all drill sites. State Senator Thompson has introduced companion legislation in the New York State Senate. It is my hope to continue working with the agency to protect the health and safety of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Right.
Hi, my name is Cameron Peterson. I'm here representing Brian Kavanaugh, State Assembly member for the 74th Assembly District.
Bring the mic closer.
Here, I'll try. We are submitted statements today to DEC, and we'll be submitting formal written comments before the close of the comment period. I will try to highlight the Assembly members' comments here tonight. As a State Assembly member who represents a district in New York City and serves on the Assembly Environmental Conservation Committee, I recognize that the proposed drilling could have enormous impacts on New Yorkers throughout our state and on the environment, both within our borders and beyond. The draft SGEIS does not adequately address a number of issues critical to the long-term health and safety of millions of New York residents and the quality of our natural environment. First point I'd like to highlight, the Delaware and Catskill watershed. Like many of the people you are hearing from tonight, I believe that the draft does not adequately factor in the risk that the proposed drilling would pose to the Delaware and Catskill watershed. The thousands of gallons of toxic and carcinogenic chemicals pumped through the wells in the hydraulic fracturing process would pass directly through the layer of earth that contains the aquifers and groundwater that feed New York City's water supply. Moreover, the scale of the activities associated with the drilling process, transportation, storage, and the disposal of the fluids used in the process pose additional potential threats. The watershed overlaps with only 10% of the Marcellus Shale formation considered for drilling in the state, and yet the drinking water of close to 9 million New Yorkers could be at risk. I believe that the public interest would be best served by banning this type of drilling activity from these watershed areas as well as other environmentally sensitive areas in New York State. Second point, filtration and testing. I won't belabor this as many have already covered it, but we know the economic and health consequences of losing our filtration exemption would be major. Third, poor environmental record of drilling companies. We can point to a ProPublica report that state and local governments have discovered over 1,000 cases of contaminated groundwater near natural gas wells in New Mexico, Alabama, Ohio, Colorado, and Pennsylvania. Four, full disclosure.
The draft does not require natural gas companies to disclose the specific mixture of chemicals they will use for drilling, and it contains virtually no discussion of toxic wastewater disposal. This is especially troubling because oil and gas companies are currently exempt from compliance with the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, thus compounding the lack of regulation imposed on the process. This secrecy is one of the key reasons that the environmental impact of this kind of drilling is difficult to assess, and we should simply not permit such secrecy here in New York. Disclosure, we should simply ban certain substances from being used in any sort of process like this in New York State. Several hundreds of such chemicals. One that should be considered for a ban is benzene, a known carcinogen. Another candidate is 4-nitrophenylene N-oxide, which is commonly used to induce the growth of cancer in lab animals and has been found at enormous concentration levels in the fluids used at drilling sites in Pennsylvania. Lastly, the availability of fresh water. Water withdrawals associated with the proposed drilling also pose a threat to long-term water availability. Yet the draft does not propose mandating a sufficiently comprehensive system for regulating water withdrawals, including the cumulative impact of multiple withdrawals under different permits, instead passing the buck to similar local regulatory agencies like the Delaware River Basin Commission, which do not have jurisdiction over the full range of potential water resources. I want to conclude by thanking DEC for the recent extension of the period during which you will receive comments through December 31st. But I'd like to reiterate my request that the period be extended for at least a full 120 days, so that every New Yorker who wishes to be heard will have that chance.
Good evening. I am Carol Kostick, Deputy Comptroller for Public Finance, and I'm here representing New York City Comptroller William C. Thompson, Jr. at this hearing. In the interest of the many speakers, I have abridged these remarks, but we have submitted full written testimony. The New York City water supply system provides about 1.2 billion gallons per day of water to 9 million people. Approximately 90% of this water arrives from the Catskill and Delaware watersheds in upstate New York, which sit atop the section of the Marcellus Shale Formation. The city, with the cooperation of the state and the local communities, has already invested hundreds of millions of dollars over the past decades to protect the watersheds and support the local communities. In 1993, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency issued its first filtration avoidance determination, or FAD, for New York City, allowing the city to deliver Cat Del water without filtration. The FAD has been renewed several times, most recently in 2007 for an unprecedented 10 years, based on the success that the city's efforts had achieved. In the absence of the FAD, the city would need to construct a filtration plant that has been estimated to cost from $6 billion to $10 billion. To place this cost in context, the water and sewer system's entire 10-year capital improvement program from the current fiscal year through 2019 is $14.2 billion. So a $10 billion plant would increase the capital improvement cost by 70%. The cost of building and operating a filtration plant would likely be borne by the existing ratepayers. Construction of a $10 billion plant could result in additional debt service expense of as much as $730 million per year. This increase in debt service would require a 27% increase to city water and sewer rates, on top of annual rate increases that are already built in to the water system's forecasts, and even before adding the high cost of operating such a facility. Water and sewer rates in New York City have already increased 57.7% over the past 4 years. Comptroller Thompson is appalled that the Department of Environmental Conservation's draft SGEIS would open access to the city's watershed for hydraulic fracturing to extract natural gas. Comptroller Thompson first expressed his concerns about gas drilling in the watershed in 2008 when he submitted comments to the state DEC in the DGEIS scoping process. Neither the final scope nor the newly proposed SGEIS were responsive to the fundamental concerns the Comptroller and others raised.